So at this point, we would like to look at some of the guidelines that can help us to develop codes, either descriptive, in vivo. The first is that you have to give a provisional name to each code, and at the same time you must ask a whole lot of specific questions about the words and phrases as we indicated, line by line or paragraph by paragraph. You should also note that you are trying to concentrate on the key issues that the info data has presented to us. And you have to make sure that these codes are provided in categories and themes. In categories and themes. In other words, the codes help us to provide our data into categories and themes. A category or theme, therefore, is a collection of similar data sorted into the same place, and this arrangement enables the researcher to identify and describe the characteristics of the category. And this was by Morse, 2008. Now, what are themes? Themes constitute patterns that are derived from conversations that we get from vocabularies, activities that tend to occur over and over, meanings that we get from the information, the feelings that are expressed, as well as sayings and proverbs that emerge from the data. Therefore, in processes or identifying themes, there are several ways of identifying the themes. There is what we call inductive and deductive, as well as semantic and latent ways of developing the themes. Now, when we talk of an inductive approach, we are looking at themes that are strongly linked to the data. And this approach identifies similarities between codes, groupings of the codes together, and giving the category a name that basically indicates what actually is common among the information. The deductive approach is also used to develop or refine categories. And this approach tends to provide theoretical and analytical interest in the area the research is being conducted. We can also identify themes through semantic or explicit levels, or what we call latent or interpretive level. And this level tells us basically about themes that are identified within the surface meaning of the data. This means, as a means of a major issue that has been identified, we are not going beyond what the participants has said or what has been written. Now, at the latent stage or level, we are identifying and examining underlying ideas assumptions, and conceptualizations which are theorized or inform us about the content of the data. It also requires much interpretation of the data. And so in many instances, our focus is that in trying to create themes or categories, you have to follow one specific question or one area of interest from one issue to the other, rather than jumping them all over. So you look at one issue at a time or one question at a time. Now, how do we identify themes? Themes are identified through these processes. Whether it is video, audio, written documents, whatever, these processes must be followed. One of the key things is what we term as repetitions. So in identifying themes, what are the things or words that are repeating itself or occurring frequently? We can also have indigenous categories. These are things that we identify through the local terms or issues that emerge from the data that sound unfamiliar or they are used in unfamiliar ways. So there are certain things that may be uncommon to the issues that are presented. We can also use metaphors, or we have to identify metaphors and analogies. Metaphors often emerge from the thoughts, the behaviors and experiences that we often experience either in the field or we discover them as people provide the information for us. And so there are certain statements that people made in our field work that are necessary. And so we have to look at these things very carefully. And we have to also look at transitions. How does the transcript or the data we've got tend to move from one paragraph to the other? Where did they pause? What were present? What were the phrases that were available? And we have to also look at similarities and differences in terms of the information that you get. Then we have to also look at linguistic connections. What are the words and phrases that appear critically in the words that must be put down from time to time? These are very important issues that must be addressed. And so you can look for words and phrases that appear constantly in the things that we do, as well as phrases and expressions that people make as they go along the data. You must also look at missing data. So we can also continually ask, what is missing here? What was the main thing that should have been said that has not been said? And make inferences out of them. Then we also have theory-related material. These are themes that characterize the experience of the informants or respondents that we want to understand and also highlight in terms of our work. And that is why it is always said that if you want to be a good qualitative researcher, then you must have a good grasp of the English language, or must have at least a little background in English literature. Thank you for listening.